everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and today I have my first ever Top 5 Wednesday video. If you're unfamiliar with what Top 5 Wednesdays is, it's a Goodreads group where every Wednesday there is a different category and the goal is to film a video talking about your top 5 things, usually books from that category. It's a really cool idea and I've seen quite a few people around BookTube doing it, and so I figured I'd hop on the bandwagon. I love structured videos. This week's Top 5 Wednesday, I'm kind of cheating with the prompt I'm starting on, but it's free-for-all. So basically choose any past Top 5 Wednesday prompt that you would like and go from there. I chose one from I think April of 2018, and that is Top 5 Favorite Children's Books to Read as an Adult. I will say, as I was writing down notes for all of these, the similar theme kept coming across of having themes and ideas and plot points and such that are accessible to children and young people, but just like mean so much more to adults, and you can get so much more out of it as a grown-up. I'm not going to say that every single time I'm talking about one of these books, but just know that that is a consistent thread that's tying these all together. But anyway, enough rambling, let's get into my list. Number 1 is probably not going to be a surprise to you at all. I have mentioned this book a couple different times on my channel. It's one of my favorites, and that is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This book is about a futuristic society where all problems and violence and illness and basically anything bad has been eradicated. So there's no disease, there's no war. It's a very ordered society and everyone has their role and everything is sort of chosen for you. And it's very peaceful, obviously, there's no conflict ever, and everything that would make it maybe undesirable is kind of done behind the scenes, if that makes sense. This is a great first sci-fi sort of book for children because it's not anything too heavy that it will really confuse anyone or upset any young people probably, but it has, again, these bigger ideas of what would happen if we did kind of structure our society so much so that no one has free will or choice. And I don't know if I got that when I read it as a kid, but now it's so interesting in a society where, I mean, free will and the opportunity to make choices leads to a lot of good, but also a lot of bad in the world. Is this really any better? It's a very interesting book to consider, and I think it has a lot of value as an adult, and I think it's also a great story for younger people. And I think the larger series is also really good, but this is definitely my favorite within the quartet. Book number 2 on my list is The Tale of Despero by Kate DiCamillo, and she's a Minnesota author, so I feel like I have to kind of give her a little extra shout out. This isn't one that I have reread as an adult, but it's one that I would definitely be interested in revisiting now that I'm a bit older. It tells this sort of whimsical adventure story of a mouse named Despero who is in love with the princess of the castle that he lives in. And that's pretty much all I remember. There's a lot of moving parts to it and a lot of different characters that we get perspectives from, of all different species as well. One thing that I think I really appreciate about it is that it does tackle darker and heavier themes such as greed and violence and just kind of that, you know, what makes someone evil, but it does it in a really responsible way, so it's not too much for a child to interact with. I think it introduces that idea of good versus evil and morality and, I don't know, all of those larger themes in a way that allows you to be introduced to it as a child and then continue to think about it in a responsible manner. I don't know if that really makes sense because I haven't read it in a long time, but I am going home at the end of the month and I know my sister owns a copy, so I might try to snag that and read it while I'm there or borrow it and bring it back to Minnesota with me. I don't know, I would really like to reread it. I was reading reviews on Goodreads and so many people were saying that they read it as bedtime stories to their children and they got so much out of it beyond just their children. So yeah, really excited to revisit this hopefully soon. Book number 3 is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I don't speak French. I hope that pronunciation wasn't as abysmal as I feel like it was. This is one that I have only read as an adult. I read this for the first time maybe like 3 years ago. I think it was when I first moved to Minnesota. It's this tiny little story of a prince who lives on this tiny planet and he is in love with this flower, and he is very protective over it and has this unconditional and sort of sacrificial love for it. But he goes on an adventure to explore new worlds and eventually ends up, I believe, on Earth. And it's just an adventure story. It's definitely something that as a kid you would just see it as this little prince exploring new places, and I think there's a lot of value in that. But as an adult, I remember that there being so many themes of faith and discussions on that unconditional and self-sacrificing love that he has for the flower, and when you don't get anything in return, how that takes a toll on your soul and psyche and energy. It also just deals with the idea of what's really important in life, and he meets several characters that sort of help him figure that out, and he is able to see what's important in other people's lives, and would he want that to be a huge central point of his life, I suppose. It's so sweet, it's darling, and I love the illustrations as well. They're also by the author. I think I read it in a day, and you can easily read it in a couple of hours. It was really impactful for me. I really loved it, and I think it's a classic children's story that a lot of people know about, but maybe not as many people have read, and I think it's definitely worth your time, especially because it'd only be 2 hours of your time, maybe, I don't know, however long it takes you to read 111 pages that also includes illustrations. I do also want to say the Netflix adaptation is awesome. I really love it. It takes the story and just goes beyond with it, and the animation style is amazing and lovely, and I love both of these stories, and I think they both are super important, and I think you would really love them. Book number 4 is more of an author, I guess, but the book that I am most drawn to as an adult is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. I remember reading this when I was a preteen or somewhere around that age, and it just kind of makes you feel really validated in kind of the hard work of growing up and becoming a teenager when everything gets so much harder, and there's so much discussion of what it means to be a young woman and all the changes your body is going through, and so many more themes than you would expect in just a short little novel. I think Judy Blume as an author is probably one of my favorites just because I have so many fond memories of her books from when I was a kid. I did read Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret last year. I reread it, and it just was really a nice reminder of putting myself back in that time of life and giving myself kind of appreciation for the fact that I got through it and I survived some of the hardest years of growing up. That was a weirdly philosophical response or answer or explanation for this one, but if you read Judy Blume as a kid, I would say go back and revisit her as an adult. It's a really cool thing to go back and read some of your favorite children's books as an adult. And then I bet you can probably guess what my final book will be, but I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the entire Harry Potter series. I think these are so worth reading as an adult. I'm currently rereading them via audiobook, and these stories just have so much in them. It's so much more than just the basic story of good versus evil. There's a whole host of discussions about that sort of gray morality and how no one is born evil or good. It's everyone's kind of born on the same page, and it's how they make choices along the way that they become one or the other. And I think there's also so many themes of growing up again and sort of the hard work of going from age 11 to 17. And there are so many emotional life experiences that can happen in that time, and J.K. Rowling examines them in a really understandable way and relatable way, I suppose, first relationships and your first fights with your friends, and getting overwhelmed by schoolwork, and there's so much that's really relatable despite it being a fantasy series where everyone possesses magical abilities and they go to a school of witchcraft and wizardry. You wouldn't think that that would be a story where you could really relate to the characters, but I certainly do. As an adult, I feel like I appreciate some of the darker moments and those raw emotions that Harry in particular expresses, especially in book 5, which is what I'm on right now. But even at the end of book 4, just some of the really heart-wrenching moments are ones that I don't think I fully appreciated as a kid. It's so good, and it is so worth it even if you haven't read it ever. My sister's currently reading them for the first time, actually my brother too. It's so cool to hear how their experiencing it as adults. I am so excited for them that they're reading it, and just excited for myself because now I get to talk about it with them. I think this is a series that just connects you to a lot of people as well. You can discuss themes within Harry Potter with so many different people, and it's always a really interesting conversation. My personal favorite thing is to try to guess everyone's Hogwarts house and then tell them why they're wrong when their answers don't match up with mine. It is just obviously, it has such a special place in my heart, and there are flaws with this story as there are with all of the books that I've mentioned, but it doesn't need to be a perfect story to still be important and worthwhile. So highly recommend it. I hope these rambling thoughts were intelligible in some way. Okay, that is that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my first Top 5 Wednesday. I really enjoyed doing it, and I want to try to do it a little bit more regularly because I think it's a cool way to think about books, and I feel like I don't talk about those aspects of these stories as much as I should. If you have any books that are favorites from your childhood that you think I should read now as an adult, please let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you know when my next video goes up, but until then, happy reading. Bye.